Welcome to the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, where we have open and honest conversations about co-parenting, separation, divorce, and the hardest question of all, should you stay or should you go? I'm Kate Anthony, your divorce survival guide, and I'm here to help you navigate some of the roughest waters you've ever swum in and answer some of your toughest questions. I've been to hell and back, and now it's my mission in life to help you get to the other side of this process with your sanity and your heart intact. Hey everyone, welcome back. So, continuing on with our series on neurodivergence in relationships, I have with me today the one and only Zawn Villines. And today we are diving into the myths around whether or not being neurodivergent means that they are inherently abusive or that they actually can't help in the house, all the ways in which neurodivergence can be weaponized, both in the idea that I can't do things because I'm neurodivergent and or people are neurodivergent, so therefore they are not able to experience empathy, all sorts of abusive, weaponized ways that people misunderstand, in particular, autism, but all forms of neurodivergence. So any conversation I have with Zawn is amazing. And this episode is no different. So if you like it, please share it. And if you like it, please head on over to Apple Podcasts and give it a bunch of stars. 5 would be great. And so without further ado, here's my conversation with Zawn Villines. Zawn, thank you so much for coming back and talking to us again.
Thank you for having me.
It is always such a pleasure. So today we're talking, this is our series on neurodivergence and in relationships. And one of the things that we hear very often, you and I and all of us in this space, is when someone says that their husband is abusive and describes all sorts of patterns of abuse, someone will say, it sounds like he's autistic. What do you have to say to that?
Well, there's two things that are wrong with this. And the first is that this is really ableist because it is labeling autism as inherently abusive. And all of the data on not just autism, but really any neurodivergence shows that neurodivergent people are far more likely to be abused than to be abusers. And so the real dynamic here is that when a woman is in a relationship with a man who is mistreating her, it's more likely that she is neurodivergent than that he is, and that her neurodivergence has made her much more accepting of his behavior than she otherwise would be, and has cut off her access to resources. But let's assume for the sake of argument that this abusive man really is neurodivergent. So what? Being neurodivergent does not entitle you to abuse people. No one is entitled to a relationship. And the real problem with this framing is that it centers the man of, it's okay if he treats her badly if he has a reason, rather than centering the woman as a person, as a whole person who is not a tool or an appliance or a recovery center. You're not a job that's entitled to give this man reasonable accommodations. And the most common dynamic we see is that these men will self-diagnose neurodivergence and not do anything about it, which suggests that these men don't even really believe that they are neurodivergent. They're just waving this flag as the next in a long series of excuses and co-opting the language of social justice of, I'm sorry, you can't criticize me because I have a disability. People with disabilities are not allowed to mistreat other people. People with neurodivergence are not allowed to mistreat other people. So it's complete bullshit.
And that's our show. Period. End of story. But I think that one of the things that you said was so important is that they'll say that they're neurodivergent, whether it's I have ADHD or I have an autism, and then it's like that's the hall pass. It's
Yeah.
not
Yes.
the opportunity for them to go, oh, you know what? I've got something that I is making being in this relationship as an equal partner more difficult for me and more difficult for my partner. And so, what do I need to do? What structures do I need to put in place? What kind of help do I need to get in order that I can rise to this occasion of partnership marriage in a way that doesn't abuse my partner or take advantage of them?
Yeah. And, you know, if we frame it in terms of any other challenge that a person can have, let's say that I have some kind of incontinence. And not only do I refuse to treat it, but I refuse to use any tools to help me control it. And so I just pee wherever I find myself and I don't clean it up. And I tell my partner, well, I'm incontinent, so there's just going to be pee everywhere and you're going to have to clean it up. We all understand that that's not reasonable because I've refused to take any reasonable steps to mitigate the challenges my partner is facing. And I'm making my partner bear the full weight of my disability. I am not doing anything to make that easier for me or for my partner. And that's what these men are doing. They're proclaiming that they're neurodivergent. They're proclaiming that that means they can't change. They're proclaiming that that means they're abusive, which again is inherently ableist and deeply offensive. And then they're saying, well, you just have to tolerate it.
Now, let me ask you this, right? Because I am raising a child with severe ADHD and he's 19. His, prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. He is, probably maybe a couple of years sort of delayed in terms of full maturity, things like that, right? And I am always aware that I ask him to unload the dishwasher 6 times in a day. And then by the morning, it still hasn't been done. And he's on his way to school. And I'm like, I want to throw things. And it is his ADHD. And I'm aware that I'm raising, a boy to be a man who is possibly someday going to be married or in a long-term relationship and things like that. And I am always struck by fuck, it is his ADHD though.
Well, I would push back on that a little bit. And this is kind of a side tangent about kids doing chores versus husbands doing chores. We like to put the two in the same bucket, but these are actually very different things. And one of the pieces of advice that I often see to parents, actually mothers, because we know it's mothers doing the work, is that, kids have to learn that it's a shared space and that we all take pride in it. And, we don't have to reward them or bribe them because we want them to take pride in their shared space. And the reality is when you're living in someone else's home, that is not your space. That is not your space that you take pride in. That's not something that you're showing off to your friends. And when you're 19, that's doubly true. So this idea that we can get kids to take pride in a home that is not their own, that they don't have control over, and to take pride in the specific tasks that adults outsource to them, I don't think is realistic. So I think a lot of what's going on there is it's just, you're the mom. It's your house. Why does he care? It's not his house. He's not bringing home dates to impress.
I don't ask him to care. I just ask him to fucking do the dishes because that is the job that he has chosen as his participation in the home.
Yeah. But if he doesn't have independent motivation, but when we're talking about a husband, we have a lot of independent motivation if women are enforcing boundaries. So the independent motivation might be you're able to stay married. You're able to be with a partner who likes you. You're able to not live in filth. Or when you're a young man dating, you're able to get women to have sex with you because they're not repulsed by your house. So I think, we often think of men and children as similar when they're really not. And we draw upon our experiences with neurodivergent children. And that's not the same as neurodivergent men. In my own house, everybody here has some kind of neurodivergence, but, we have things that we have to do. Fairness doesn't mean everybody does the same things. It means we all pick tasks that we are equipped to do. We all do some things we like and some things we don't. And nobody gets leisure at the expense of someone else's labor. And so
Mm,
that's what
that
equity
part.
looks, and that's what fairness for neurodivergence looks like. My husband knows that if I have to make a phone call, I am going to do anything to get out of it.
I was going to say, I
Anything.
know the answer to this one.
I hate talking to people on the phone. It makes me crazy. And so he takes over the phone calls. I am obsessively organized and plan my day in like 15-minute intervals. And so when we're planning like a family event, that's going to be the thing that I'm going to do. And then my husband's going to like cook the meals, wrap the presents, do all of that. Neurodivergence is not a pass out of household labor. It means that two partners need to come together and talk about what they can each do. And that's the problem, is that the conversation always ends with, well, I'm neurodivergent, and so you do it all. It's never, well, I'm neurodivergent, so let's talk about our abilities. If you're talking about an autistic person, maybe they have a special interest in something that can be useful for the house. But not everything has to be fun, and not everything has to be easy. Autism is not a reason someone can't wash the dishes. It's just not.
No, absolutely not. But it might be the reason you have to remind them a few times. And I guess I just bring up Emmett because, absolutely, he doesn't have the same investment and responsibility for this house. But I'm also so keenly aware that I'm raising a guy who might someday be in that position and that his wife is going to absolutely kill him or divorce him. And when I say that to him, it's like, he doesn't give a shit at this point, of course, right?
Yeah.
But when I sit down and I say to him, honey, I'm exhausted. Every single aspect of this house falls only on me because I don't have a partner. So it's, I pay every single bill, every single ounce of income, all the cleaning, right? Like, and he lives here. When I talk to him about how hard it is for me, he softens and he's like, yeah, that's not okay, mom, and so he's more open and willing, which is something that we don't necessarily see with a lot of these husbands who claim neurodivergence in the name of laziness.
Well, exactly. And that's, children really have a lot of difficulty seeing their parents as fully human. I think that we can all remember our own childhood and think back on all the ways that we failed to empathize with our parents. An adult human man who has committed to spend his life with you and who is supposed to love you is supposed to be able to see you as fully human. And I think that this, well, I'm neurodivergent card is a strong signal that he doesn't, because the response should be, what does that have to do with the conversation? You're neurodivergent and what are you proposing so that things are fair?
Right. That's right. I want to shift a little bit and I want to talk about the idea of abusive behaviors, not just in domestic labor, right? But like actual abusive behavior. Someone says, oh gosh, it sounds like he doesn't have empathy, must be autistic.
Right. Yeah. So this idea that autistic people are not lack empathy is just false. I think that it's a shorthand for people to understand autism. It is difficult for autistic people to understand things that have been made culturally normal. Autistic people generally want more direct communication rather than like passive aggressive indirect communication. They may not pick up on subtle cues. That's not about empathy. That's about a lot of people communicate in a way that's not direct. So that's not autism. But even if it were, even if a hallmark of autism was lack of empathy, well, autistic people aren't entitled to relationships because no one is entitled to a relationship. A relationship is something you co-create with the other person, where you each bring something of significant value. And, well, I'm autistic, so I can't bring value is, again, false and ableist. But also, even if it were true, well, sorry, I guess you don't get a relationship then.
We actually get to opt out. If that is the response, then we actually also get to choose whether we're going to be in the relationship or not.
Right. And this is all about what this really is about centering men. It's about men as the main story. He is the hero with the autism and it's her job to support him. We never ever ask, is a woman neurodivergent? Is a woman struggling? And when we do identify that a woman is struggling, we weaponize it against her. We tell her, oh, that's your hormones talking, or, oh, that's just your postpartum depression. Autistic women hear all the time, well, are you sure he's really abusive, or are you just misunderstanding it because you're autistic?
Oh, wow. Interesting. I hadn't heard that one.
We always weaponize neurodivergence against women, whether the woman is neurodivergent or the man is. And that's what reveals that this isn't really about neurodivergence. It's about just finding whatever excuse we can for men to benefit at women's expense.
And this whole thing, right? This is all about supporting patriarchy. It's just basically always our job, no matter what, right? There's no exit to this maze,
right?
Unless it's actually exiting the maze, right? But having it be that women are the ones suffering no matter what is really the problem. We're going to take a quick break and we will be right back. Okay, we are back. Before the break, we started talking about patriarchy and how this conversation around neurodivergence is sort of designed to put all the blame on the women and all the labor on women. So, Zawn, how do you feel? Patriarchy, obviously, inherently is a system that supports men. How do you see this playing out in your experience and work?
So this is something I've been writing about a bit more lately. I see this common trope that patriarchy is a system of oppressing women. And patriarchy obviously does oppress women. But that is not the point of patriarchy. Men did not just one day decide to oppress women for fun. It doesn't make any sense. Men invented patriarchy as a system to benefit men. So the goal of patriarchy is to benefit men at women's expense. And this might seem like a distinction without a difference, but it's really not. And let me explain why. You can live in a patriarchal system as a woman. And if you are serving men in the way that they want you to, you may never experience their violence and aggression. It's only when you step out of line that you're likely to experience it. And that is why when women start pushing back on this gender division of labor, on emotional abuse, on neglect of the children, on all of the problems that are just endemic to heterosexual marriage, that's why the most common response is an escalation of the abuse. It's why I think all these systems that aim to get women household equality are just so poorly informed about what things actually look like. Because when you communicate more, what happens is he just tries to enforce it more. And it spirals, because the purpose of patriarchy is to benefit men. If we're talking about something like household labor, having tons of extra free time, having tons of extra friendships, more travel, less responsibility, more sleep, this is an immense, massive benefit. It's not a small thing. And men will do a lot to maintain access to that benefit that they get by treating their partner like an appliance.
I love the way you put that, because we're an appliance, right? Like we are there. It's utilitarian, right? It is, you are a toaster, you make toast. You are a woman, you support me.
Yeah, well, it's like, they treat women kind of like pets. And it's like, you like your pet, you love your pet as long as your pet doesn't step out of line. But like, you're not going to accept input from your pet about how you're supposed to run the house. You're not going to listen to your pet when they tell you, well, I really think you should be doing more tasks. It's a really disrespectful, demeaning kind of love that a lot of these men feel. And it's because they see women as lesser and as things that are there to service them. And they don't have to be consciously aware of this or articulate this belief. You can tell that a man believes this by looking at the way he treats his partner. Does he play video games while she wraps presents? Does he sleep while she breastfeeds the baby? Does he sleep while she's giving birth to the baby? If yes, then he doesn't love her.
Right. So that's sort of hard. I think that, like, when you say that, where it's like, then he doesn't love her, and I know what you're saying, but I think that's a very direct, harsh way of, and I'm sure deliberately harsh way of putting it. when you say that, do you get pushback from people who are like, no, he loves me. He just,
Not
whatever it
really.
is.
No. I think that, we have learned for so long to talk around this issue and to build the justifications into the way we talk about it and to give men the benefit of the doubt. I mean, this is part of patriarchy. And even if you look up like these feminist life coaches, they're telling you how to communicate more effectively. They're telling you how to gentle parent your husband. They're saying things like, oh, he's a good guy who means well. He just doesn't know that kids die without food. And it's complete bullshit.
Right.
It's totally false. And I think that we need to get real about the fact that this is patriarchy. And these are the kinds of marriages that patriarchy creates. And these are the kind of men that patriarchy creates. Patriarchy damages men in a way where most of them are very poorly equipped to have good relationships, where most of them don't actually really like or respect women very much. They just like the resources that women get for them. And so it is direct and it is harsh, but I think it's something that is a relief to women to hear, to have someone finally correctly identify that their partner isn't neurodivergent. He's broken by patriarchy and he's not going to get fixed until he decides to fix it.
That's right. That's right. And there's really one way that happens, which is that there are like actual consequences for his behaviors.
Yes. And this is what we see all the time. Women tell their husbands, okay, I need you to take on a little bit more of the load. And the husbands have a conversation with them. And the ones who consider themselves nice pretend to listen and promise to do better. And maybe they do one thing different for 2 weeks, but they never get to full equity and they never get a full improvement because they have no reason to. They don't lose anything. I mean, this is boundaries 101. You cannot get someone to give up a privilege that you have given them for years and years and years unless they're going to lose something that's more important to them. If they were going to do it out of the goodness of their hearts, they would have already done it. If they were going to do it because they cared about equality, they would have already done it. If they were going to do it because they cared about her well-being, they would have already done it. Because men are not dumb. And that includes neurodivergent men. Like they can see that someone's feeding the kids, that someone's feeding the pets. They can see that she's up with the kids while he's sleeping. They know what's going on. That's why they will come up with any lie, any excuse, any defense to keep it because they want it.
Right. Right. And the bottom line is they can see all these things and they don't care.
Or they don't care enough. Maybe they feel guilty. I mean, I think a lot of these men get defensive because what do people do when they feel guilty, but they don't want to change? They get defensive. They know they're doing something wrong. Yeah. And maybe they would stop doing it if it were easier to stop doing it. But it's not easy because what these men are getting is immense. And what these women are sacrificing is massive.
And then that's where the trap that we fall into is trying to make it easier for them. Right? We do work really hard to try to make it easier because we know it's hard. So, okay, well, let's buy a card game. Let's make the lists. I don't know. I'll help you. I'll help you for, a few weeks until you get the hang of it. But that's not a consequence, right? That's not
right.
Yeah.
No, that's building the excuse in for him because now he knows that she thinks that he can't do it. And so then he'll say that he can't. Oh, it's too hard and it's too complicated and I can't remember it. Remember, it's my ADHD. I'm married to someone with ADHD who does forget to do things sometimes, but then he does them. He doesn't foist those things on me. We act like neurodivergence means incompetence. It just means a different skill set. That's right. So we try to base our family life around what is his skill set, what is my skill set. A couple of days ago, we had just come back from a vacation and I wanted to go to this plant show after this long vacation drive. And it's the only day that we can go. And we got back and we're unpacking. And I was like, you know what, let's not do the plant show. It's too much. And he's like, no, let's go to the plant show. So I'm excited. We're going to the plant show. But then we're at the plant show and I'm feeling guilty because even though I don't have a patriarchal marriage, I'm not immune to mom guilt. So, my husband's playing with the kids while I'm shopping for plants. And I'm I got to speed this up. I got to move it along. So I texted him and I'm like, I just need 5 more minutes and then we'll go. And he texts back and he said, are you just saying that because of your mom guilt? And I was like, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And he was like, stay here as long as you want. You deserve it. I need you to do this because when you're happy, everybody's happy. And so
that's a husband.
it is a husband, but it's, he doesn't just begrudgingly split the duties. He also is mindful of the impact of patriarchy on both of us.
Yeah.
And this is something women do as second nature. Women are always looking out for their partner's feelings. I'm sure that there are women listening to this and thinking, oh, what a dreamy man that he would say that. But like, I say stuff like that to him all the time of, oh, you just feel guilty. You need to just go play chess a little longer. It'll be good for you. It's only noteworthy when a man says something like that.
That's right. That's right. Yes. And it is that it's the, the man in the grocery store. Oh, what an amazing dad. You take the baby shopping, whereas women are doing it all the fucking time. But being in tune with our partner's needs and desires and the things that make them happy and sort of facilitating things for them to do that, which if you know Zawn at all, you know that the plant store
yes.
It's very important to her. Very important to her. She's my underground plant guru.
Well, and I think the plant store thing is actually a really good kind of metaphor for neurodivergence. So my husband and I don't really share any interests. We're both really into activism and feminism and social justice, but in terms of like how we like to spend our time, there's almost no crossover. I'm always rescuing animals. My husband is like, please don't bring any more animals into this house. I love plants. My husband does not understand it. He wants to play chess and do jujitsu and like all of that kind of stuff. And like, we're just not into each other's stuff. But here's the thing. My husband knows that the plants are really important to me. Mm-hmm. And so anytime there's a plant thing, he's making it a priority. If I'm sick and there's like 10 plants that need to be watered, or like after I had our babies, he's taking care of them. He steps in and takes care of my frogs when like I can't do it. This is not noteworthy because I do the same thing for him. And most women do the same sorts of things for their husbands. And it's all about like accommodating our differences. So, you can see how like I can accommodate his chess schedule. He can accommodate my plant schedule, but then we also do that with each other's neurodivergence. He's making the phone calls for me. I'm planning the parties and he's executing. This is what a partnership is sitting down and figuring out, what do you need? What do I need? What are we both good at? What are we both bad at? How do we divide it up? And the fundamental problem in most heterosexual marriages is that you're never able to get to that point, because the marriage is fundamentally a dynamic of the woman giving and the man taking.
That's right. And then all the bullying that's associated with that, right? Because if I have a need, if I express the need, if I say, I can't do this anymore, fundamentally, most of these marriages that we're talking about, they are abusive. Anything that takes advantage of or where somebody else is benefiting off of the labor of another person, unpaid labor, right? Especially when the expectation is partnership, that's abuse.
Well, and to the abuse thing, like I hear all the time people say, oh, well, it's just household labor inequality. Well, first, that is a huge thing because that person is literally stealing your life. They're taking years of your life over the course of a marriage. But the other thing is it's never just household labor inequality, because there are whole systems in place to support this. For a man to get away with forcing his postpartum wife to be the only one who gets up with the baby and the only one who cooks, there has to be a whole structure of psychological degradation built in for that to happen. It's just not the case that you can have a marriage where there is household labor inequity and there aren't also other forms of abuse. They're always there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right.
And like, I'll give you an example. If there is an imbalance, then it's always going to be the woman is learning more about parenting. And if the woman is learning more about parenting, then the dad is going to be an inferior parent who treats the children badly and who undermines the mother's parenting. So right there, you see how inequality isn't just inequality. It's also giving way to abuse.
I think this is one of the most common issues that I see, is that we do all of the reading of all of the books, the podcasts, we get pregnant, we get the books on parenting, we get the baby books, we sign up. Now, I guess there are websites that track it and all of these things, and they are not doing any of that. And so then we are responsible for delegating or teaching and are usually rebuffed when we do so. I want to talk more about this on the other side of our break. Okay, we're back. So before the break, I was saying that we do all the labor and then we have to do the teaching, which, by the way, we don't have the fucking time or energy for. And then we get rebuffed, and then we're nag, and then we're bossy.
One of the key things that patriarchy teaches everyone is that mothers are kind of dumb and kind of embarrassing and kind of irrelevant, and motherhood isn't really a skill. If you can get people to believe that, then you can get them to not listen to mothers. What men do is they ignore how much labor motherhood is for even, let's just say, just an average, mediocre mom who's not dealing with anything particularly challenging with her kids, who's not really always bringing her A game, but just trying to not be abusive. It's so much work. It's so much education. It's so much patience. It is just not possible to be a mother without using extensive skills and learning lots of stuff. And these men act like it's not a skill, and these women bring nothing to the table. And then often in the same breath say, but you're better at it. It's their arguments aren't even coherent and consistent.
That's right. Well, you're better at it. So I'm not going to do it because you're better.
Yeah. And I see it all the time with friends who are well, my husband doesn't really understand our kids' neurodivergence, so I can't really expect him to do X, Y, and Z. And so what happens is she gets better and better and better at parenting, and he gets worse and worse and worse. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy until it reaches the point where he really is not fit to parent that child at all.
That's right. That's right. We had that when Emmett was diagnosed, and he was diagnosed pretty young. He was 6 when he was diagnosed with very severe ADHD. I mean, it was so severe that obviously it was presenting badly enough that our teachers were like, and so I immediately went to work. I bought all the books. I signed up for all these online classes of learning what it means and how to do it and yada, yada, yada. And my ex's response was, well, he would say to people, well, Emmett has ADHD, but it's not that bad. It's not serious or anything. Except that when professionals looked at his evaluation, they would be like, oh, holy shit. Okay, this is really serious. So I would say, no, it is really bad. It is really serious, actually. And he would parent with discipline because that's, power over. That was going to work. And he was so sort of dismissive for so long of the severity of what we were dealing with. The narrative was that I was just coddling. Mm-hmm. I refused to discipline behavior that I knew was a neurodivergence. I'm not going to discipline or time out the ADHD out of my child, right? That doesn't work. Yeah.
That becomes a real problem for advocacy, because the thing a lot of parents encounter is that when they get into the school system, you're sooner or later going to have a teacher who is not knowledgeable about neurodivergence, not knowledgeable about parenting.
Shocking.
And the mother and the therapist and the pediatrician are all saying this child needs this intervention and this intervention and this intervention. And the teacher or the nanny or the daycare provider or whatever is saying, no, he needs discipline, and he needs boundaries, and he needs this, and he needs the privileges taken away. Mm-hmm. And so then that feeds the dad's bad behavior. And it undermines the child at school, because then the parents aren't on the same page and they're not advocating together for the child. I mean, I can tell you with my husband and I, who are very much on the same page, that we get what we want for our kid. And, we've been lucky in that we have found good providers and that we're good advocates and all of that. But I can certainly see a number of situations where if he was showing doubt, we would not be getting what we needed. But because we go in lockstep and we're like, here is the evidence, here is what she needs, here's what we have to do, we basically just get, okay.
Yeah, that's right. And it would be really interesting to see what would happen, right? If it was just you, just the woman, going in to the principal's office or wherever to say, this is what we need, right? Because mothers are cast as, oh, she's just coddling, or there's, but as soon as the husband shows up, it's like, oh, no. Okay, we can take this seriously now.
Well, we had that experience with a therapist who we no longer use for our child, who, when she met with my daughter's school, which has been nothing but incredible, she said something like, well, part of the problem is the mom's really traumatized. And she wasn't treating me. I know, totally unethical. She wasn't treating me. She didn't know anything about me, the false statement, like all of that. But it's the sort of thing that in the wrong school setting could have really set off a chain reaction of basically, this mother is crazy. And that's the real challenge this child has.
Wow.
But instead, my husband went in and he was like, we fired the therapist. She has never treated Zawn. She doesn't know anything about Zawn's history. She's never spent more than 10 minutes with Zawn. Let me tell you about what's really going on. And it got things back on course because here is this authoritative man coming in and saying, let's redirect to what this kid needs, not the gossip that the nutty therapist is giving you.
Right. But if you hadn't had him going in and doing that, like it would have just been like you, the nutty, traumatized woman, going in and trying to advocate for yourself against a system that was probably already biased against you.
Exactly. And that's what most women deal with. And I see it all the time where they put so much effort in and then the husband just undermines it. And, we know we have this system where we perceive mothers as dumb and where we want to blame them for their children's struggles. And so as soon as there's an opportunity to blame mom, we'll take it.
Ugh. So let's go back to this idea of neurodivergence as a weapon of the patriarchy.
Yeah.
Because that's really what it is, right? When we say, oh, well, he's just autistic, or has ADHD or whatever, who's neurodivergent, so he can't X, Y, Z. He can't participate as a full partner in this union, in the system that we've created together. That is a weapon. That is now a weapon of patriarchy.
Exactly. And the thing I would say about that is I want to be really clear that neurodivergence is real. And we're having a moment right now where we treat neurodivergence as kind of like an amusing personality quirk. The reality is we live in a really ableist society where our society disables neurodivergent people. It's not that neurodivergent people are broken. It's that they live in a society that is not designed for them. And so things that are completely morally neutral get treated as really catastrophic disabilities. And we refuse to accommodate, and we try to teach kids to do silly things like make eye contact or, be able to meet in person versus Zoom or whatever arbitrary thing we've come up with. So I want to say neurodivergence is real, and it is really hard to be a neurodivergent person in an ableist society. It's a good thing that we are becoming more and more aware of that. But when I say that neurodivergence is a tool of patriarchy, what I mean is that patriarchy will use whatever it can to put women back in their place in service of men. And so that means if the woman's neurodivergent, that's going to be used against her. She's crazy. She's hysterical. She's unreliable. She doesn't understand her own life. She doesn't deserve any accommodations. And if the man is neurodivergent, that's also going to be used against the woman. Well, she needs to better accommodate him. She needs to learn how to deal with him. She needs to gentle parent him. She needs to give him a break. There's no scenario in which we say, well, she's neurodivergent, so he needs to do 99% of the labor.
Can you imagine?
And often when this is happening, both the man and the woman are neurodivergent. In one of my surveys, I asked about neurodivergence, and neurodivergent women actually did more household labor and more parenting than any other group. And a lot of them told me it was because they felt like they had to compensate. They had to prove that they were good enough. They had to prove that they could do it. And neurodivergent men did less of everything than any other group because they could lean on neurodivergence as an excuse and they could use their partners as accommodation.
So, what do you suggest women do when faced with conversations about anything, parenting, any form of inequality, or just relationship issues, and the partner says, well, I can't because I'm neurodiverse?
Okay, well, let's have a conversation about what you can do and how we can split this evenly. So you can't help the kid with the homework or cook the meals. So I'll do the homework and you do all the school drop-offs and pickups. You can't cook the meals. So, I'll cook the meals and you do all the grocery shopping. And what you'll quickly find is that what he wants her to believe is that actually he can't do anything. And so then it's okay, well, you can't contribute anything to this relationship. Why should I be in this relationship?
Aha. Right. And that's really the answer, right? Like, cause it's not, okay, well, I guess how can I further accommodate you? My response usually, with Emmett, if he's struggling, I say it's not an excuse to not participate. Unfortunately, it means that you have to work harder to come up with systems and structures to help remind you, or right? Like if I say, let's do this, like you got to do it now because you're going to forget. And that doesn't mean that it automatically slides back onto me. In an adult relationship, it's you are a grown-up and you are an equal partner in this. And so if you need help and reminders, ADHD coaches can be really great, right?
Yeah.
But it's not, the opting out is not acceptable. That's not how we do this.
Right. Well, and there are meaningful and loving ways to accommodate your partner. And in an equitable relationship, it looks something like this. So I need my routine. I need my schedule. I need my environment to be a certain way. And like, as long as I have that, I am good. And my family understands this. And they support me in maintaining the routine, even if like some aspects of the routine are things they wouldn't do. Like there's no reason that the dishes have to be done by a specific time every night. But, we've all agreed to this because we understand that like a healthy mom is good for everyone. In return, when there is a disruption in the routine, I understand that I'm not allowed to act like an asshole because because I usually get my routine and I can rely on that as a source of stability. But like when we go on vacation, like I've got to not be a jerk. And that's the way it goes. So it's reasonable to accommodate your neurodivergent partner, but accommodation does not mean sacrificing your entire life and well-being at the altar of their neurodivergence, particularly if they're not actually acting like a neurodivergent person, because what most of us learn is what our needs are and how to seek them out. And if your partner is not doing that, and if your partner does not seem afflicted by neurodivergence in other areas, like at work, then it's just a weapon. It's just a tool. It's just another way of exploiting you and guilting you for asking for anything.
I think that's a really important thing. It's like, the idea of, well, I just have this. And it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe we should, let's go get you a diagnosis. Or how is this affecting you in other aspects of your life? Oh, it's not? Huh.
Yeah.
Right. And that is a huge, huge red flag for everybody.
So we should also consider like what we would do if the roles were reversed. And in most relationships, you have a case study in what to expect if the roles were reversed, because you can look at the postpartum period when a woman is really not safely able to do a lot of things that we force her to do, like being on her feet all day and, cooking for a family while she's bleeding or recovering from surgery. What did he do for you? Did he accommodate you in any way? If the answer is no, then this is just exploitation.
Amen, sister. Amen. Zawn, as always, I love and adore you on a personal level and on a professional level, but I appreciate your insights. I love the way that you frame things so clearly and directly. And I think it just can be such sort of a somewhat blinding light, maybe sometimes to some people to sort of hear it said so clearly, but really important to shine the light on this the way that you do. And I just really appreciate you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Divorce Survival Guide podcast. If you like what you hear, head on over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in and leave me a review. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at the Divorce Survival Guide. I'll see you next time, and until then, remember, you, my love, deserve to be happy.